A Brush with Fate, Chapter 3, Rubik's Cube of Life. A dozen charred bodies being covered with blankets, ash still falling around them. Frantic shouts punctuated the air as the living huddled together, medical teams tending to them. The smell of smoke still lingering in the air as the building smoldered, the upper story still burning. His view was then obscured by a pony in a respirator, the stallion's eyes wide in horror as the responder looked down at him. White lights, horrified gasps, the smell of hospital antiseptic as the doctors began to try and restore flesh and hair. The constant, never-ending ache of regrowing nerves and sinew. The numbness of painkillers as he moved a limb and bone to retain their flexibility. The nightmares. The fear. A shocked and then caring gaze as a princess directed her calming magic, soothing his mind. Was it worth it, though? Yes. That answer hasn't changed, not in 4 years, and it never will. Who can put a price on what was saved? That question I shouldn't delve into. I know the answer. Because someone did. Semi-lucid dreaming was a skill passed down by his Thestral great-great-grandfather, a family talent, if you will, along with an ease of nighttime living. Unfortunately, such a dreaming skill was only somewhat helpful with memories, as Steele had long since discovered. However, Steele felt the dream memory shift, a familiar voice causing the disturbing scene to flee, as shadows did before the sun.
I promised you, Steele. And I don't break those,
Luna declared, as her magic punched through the insidious thoughts that threatened to send his mind down a darker path.
Now sleep.
Steele couldn't remember the rest of the night's dreams, only the last few moments and the feelings. Luna was the only one who knew of the dream, at least in general, that is. It was an unspoken secret between the two, she having helped tease out what would help him most during the darkest hours a few years ago. When the lights had been turned off in the hospital, when the only ponies present were the night shift, the constant ache and anxiety from being bound in a hospital bed, limbs wrapped and secured, friends and family having to go on with their lives. The guard woke up to a tear-stained pillow, the memory of 2 loving hooves wrapped around his body, urging him onwards. Even now, he didn't know who it was that nuzzled his neck and pulled the stallion close. He never saw her face or heard her voice, as much as he wanted to. A dream or not, the warmth and comfort from such was enough to make Steele put on his armor without complaint as his alarm sounded, the pony getting ready for the night shift. For now, a faceless mare. A comfort amid the fire. Literally, in one case. Until that changes, onward I go. Looking at himself in the mirror, the stallion took a deep breath as the scars peeked out from underneath his fur. Onward. Always onward. Grabbing a crossbow from the wall, the stallion began to trot towards the training grounds. He had an appointment to keep.
Where's Private Heart?
Luna asked Celestia as they ate an early dinfist together, Celestia's ears perking up.
Oh, he's at the training grounds. I was going to tell you after we ate, but I think you may enjoy his demonstration. His what?
Celestia grinned, quite happy to know something about Luna's assistant that she didn't. It was the small things when it came to sister one-upping. Nothing critical, just a,
I know something, you don't.
And yet, both alicorns would deny being petty to a fault.
He trains unicorns in the manual use of crossbows when magic suppression is active, or when they're out of mana. They're holding the training before I lower the sun in about 2 hours. As an earth pony? Fascinating. I expect his rank to not stay static for long if that's the case. I think I'll take a look. Isn't it supposed to rain, though? Do you think that'd stop him?
Luna couldn't help but smile slightly at that, her head shaking slowly.
No, I imagine it wouldn't. Now then, recruits! Private Steelheart will conduct the next portion of the training!
The drill instructor barked, horn igniting to arrange the firing line with various long-range implements. Crossbows, throwing knives, short spears, and a few other lesser-used weapons.
The reason why you have been separated from your usual squads is because you are unicorns. That gives you an advantage in terms of loading a crossbow or any other more complicated implement. However, you are also at a disadvantage for when your magic runs out. Your enemy will not care that you have never used hoof and mouth on your weapons,"
the bright green unicorn said, then filling her impressively large lungs once again as a light drizzle began to patter against the armored recruits.
"And the weather is to be no obstacle. You will learn and practice in rain or shine. To begin, give it a go without any direction. You completed crossbow training last week, as well as emergency use without magic for a single shot. However, you must now try it without using your magic for continuous fire. Private Heart will show you the golden standard for reloading, speed, and accuracy. Fire your bolts as fast as you can, or more if you can manage it. Now, take the line!"
The dozen recruits trotted up to look at their weapons on the table, Steelheart taking his place in the center of them. He didn't seem to notice the recruits, nor the alicorn teleporting to the side of the firing line and watching with interest. Like the other recruits, he had a 5-bolt quiver strapped to his right forelimb, the crossbow itself laying on the long wooden table. It was identical to the other guards, except Steel's had a cutie mark etched into the metal near the base, a shield, and a barely hidden heart.
"Begin in 3, 2, 1... Load and fire, recruits!"
The unicorns began a mess of scrambling, each balancing the weapon a slightly different way. Steelheart immediately snatched the weapon and loaded it, angling his forelimb to expertly notch a bolt and draw the crossbow in a single, fluid motion. He fired, the bolt zipping through the air and hitting dead center of the target.
"Come on, recruits! You haven't even drawn back the string! If all else fails, remember the steps. Draw, load, fire! Faster! Teeth or hooves!"
Half of the recruits now notched their bolts, another sound ringing out. The other half now figured it out, the dozen or so unicorns all firing in a staccato of bolts that hit the targets. Mostly, anyway. As they put on their second bolts, Steelheart sent another bolt soaring through the air, a rather tense grin now edging on his face, as the rain began to intensify. The slight spatter of water now quickly turning into a soaking deluge. The recruits began to slip with their motions as the water complicated things. The drill sergeant fell silent with a smile as each of the ponies now turned to watch the guard continue, abandoning their efforts to watch and learn. It was clear that that had been a teaching goal of the sly instructor. The downpour continued, Steel slamming in the final bolt onto his crossbow. Picking up a stray bolt with his teeth, Steel drew back the string with his hoof, notching the projectile without the use of the quiver and then sending the extra bolts down range. Another object was picked up this time, a large throwing knife. Balancing it in his hoof, Steel torqued his body and sent it zipping towards the target, the weapon thudding into the packed straw. Luna's eyes narrowed as the recruit stared, the guard's sigh heaving as the unnatural scars were now starkly visible against his soaked fur. Not hidden by fur or armor, it was as though a foal had drawn a stick figure up and down the stallion's body, straight gray lines marking up his limbs and up across Steel's barrel. It was a youngster's interpretation of a skeleton, now only visible as the rain continued to fall.
"Thank you, Private Heart. Now then, recruits! Recruits!"
the instructor roared, making all of the unicorns snap back to attention. "That is the standard to which you must hold yourself. That is why we are taking 3 days of training for non-magical use of weaponry. Now, let me show you the steps in greater detail." As Private Heart trotted off with a crossbow slung across his back, Luna could see a few of the ponies letting their gaze drift back to the scarred stallion.
Natural, but obnoxious. They should know better. Would I have known better years ago, though? Perhaps not.
Luna's curiosity got the best of her, the alicorn putting on her royal mask as she trotted around to inspect the royal training grounds. Nodding to the various recruits, her presence wasn't a huge surprise, since both she and Celestia had tried to be more involved in the goings-on in the guard as of recently. The alicorn stopped when she saw Steel sitting on a hill overlooking the training grounds, just outside the limits of the actual camp. A pang rang through her chest as the stallion subtly looked down at his scarred forelimbs, head shaking slowly as he then stood tall to watch the various recruits training.
A quiet, introspective pony. Aren't you quite the enigma, Steelheart? One would hear your name alone and pass quite a few incorrect judgments on you. I most certainly was guilty of that for a brief moment.
Luna bit back a wince as Steel's eyes drifted to her, the pony locking onto her gaze for a good long moment, letting the princess know he fully well saw her. A slight nod, and then he went back to surveying the camp.
Quite an enigma indeed.
The princess walked around the camp a bit more, then vanishing with a pop of magic to return to the castle in time for night court. However, What she didn't see after turning away was the faintest of smiles dawn on Steele's face. Luna let out a groan, flopping onto her half-couch, half-beanbag, half-comfy thing.
I know there aren't 3 halves, but I'll take a dozen disillusioned changelings over 5 nobles trying to squeeze bits out of every royal coffer imaginable. At least the captured changelings have been polite. Totally brainwashed, but polite. But that's all on Thorax to fix. I wonder if Steele will talk today.
It has been almost a full week since Private Heart had been assigned as Luna's personal assistant, and he still hasn't spoken a word to her. Clearly, he was milking the payback offer as much as possible. The stallion was cheeky, though, and that was something Luna had quickly begun to appreciate. If not, look forward to in a rather endearing way. He still wore a small cream-colored pillow with a small blue moon patterned onto his helmet every day. It was rather adorable, an interesting contrast to the rather handsome and fierce image he had struck on that training hill.
Handsome and adorable? That's a new combination. Or is it? I mean, he is. I can't ignore that fact. Not that I want to ignore...
The princess's amusing thoughts were derailed by the pain that shot down her neck and spine. She must have slept wrong, anxieties tweaking muscles and a counterproductive gesture of relaxation. It had started yesterday as a twinge, but now was a full-blown ache. A knock at the door signaled Steele's arrival, Luna's ears perking up slightly.
Come in.
He was a welcome addition to a day usually filled with drudgery, and she was quickly learning that the usual formalities were tossed out the window on the 3rd day. It was relieving, in a quite few ways, having less of a guard and more of a friend. Perhaps that was Celeste's intention. No, not her sister.
Celeste only came up with the idea on the spot out of care. Steele offered to help. I won't go down the path of thinking my sister is operating behind my back. Maybe he had the idea originally? I'll have to ask him, whenever he decides to talk. He has a nice voice. 'Tis a shame that it is slacked this week. Steele, are you going to talk today?
She asked as the stallion trotted in, a smug grin on his face as he shook his head.
What about after the weekend?
A nod, and Luna couldn't help but smile.
So my penance is over? I must say, the strong, silent type suits you rather nicely. What do we have on the to-do list tonight?
Steele grins, passing over a parchment and standing awkwardly, ears swiveling as Luna let out a hiss, pain shooting up her back. Should I suggest it? I don't... Steele sighed internally, torn between what was appropriate and what may help. Well, no harm in asking. I suppose my relationship with Luna is odder than most. Not sure if she trusts me enough, though. Trotting over to the simple desk and mirror on the side of the princess's room, Steele scanned the contents and located the preferred item in question. Luna blinked as he slid on a hoof-latched brush, gesturing to the alicorn. The fact that her ears continued to remain perked up was a good sign.
I'm not sure a brush is going to help Steele, but that is nice of you to offer.
Luna replied, clearly not entirely convinced of her own words, judging by the tone. Steele shook his head, pressing a hoof against the other forelimb and maneuvering it in a circle.
You know, if any pony other than my assistant offered this, I'd smack them with my... brush.
Luna's words trickled off as Steele began to snicker, gesturing to the pillow on his helmet.
Oh, quiet you,
she grumbled, sighing and settling down with a flop.
I suppose it can't hurt any more than it already does. Just not the wings.
Steele nodded, slipping off the brush and placing it back. Wings were a sensitive matter for Pegasi, and it would appear alicorns. That was both in a literal and metaphorical sense. Trotting over to the prone princess, the guard pushed the slight absurdity of the situation out of his mind. This entire thing wasn't exactly normal, so... Frowning, Steele massaged the massive knot in between Luna's shoulders, the princess letting out a sigh of relief. Stars above, Luna. You're more stressed than I am. Then again, a bit more pressure for you to deal with, giving a princess a massage? What a way to end the week. I've always seen her as more of a friend, though. Even in a distant sense, ever since the incident. Maybe that's why this isn't otter. The guard couldn't help but smile as Luna relaxed, the knot fading under his hooves. Well, I imagine that was a bucket list for a few guards. Give a princess a massage, probably with a few different motives though. Not that Luna isn't extremely attractive in quite a few ways. Those eyes. No, focus, you're a guard. Professional distance.
Thank you, Steel.
Luna mumbled as she shifted, the guard standing to the side.
That feels much better. I would have not guessed that you would be so adept at a simple massage.
Her eyes then narrowed playfully, the princess reaching over to gently boop the guard on the nose with a hoof.
But I think there's a lot more to you than meets the eye,
The stallion's eyes crossed briefly at the gesture, cheeks heating up at the comments. Don't overthink it, don't overthink it, don't overthink it. Oh no, you're overthinking it!
I'm just teasing. You don't get to monopolize the payback after all.
Luna added with a cheery grin, clearly stifling a giggle as the stallion let out a sigh.
Perhaps I am pushing my luck with the less formal conduct, though.
The Steel only shrugged, not entirely sure how to respond to that. It was nice to have another friend, especially one he held in such high regard, while many ponies may not be sure of how to treat a princess in an informal manner. The guard found it rather endearing that they trusted some with glimpses to their genuine personalities. He just happened to be getting a larger look than most. Larger. Alicorn pun.
Well, I think I need to go address a few things throughout the castle. If you could run over to the general commissary and pick up some items, I would greatly appreciate that.
Luna remarked as she levitated to scroll over to Steel, the guard looking over it curiously. Such an interesting pony. If things were different, perhaps... No, I'd certainly... Could I? Dare I? I mean, I'm still coping with... Luna? Steel's concerned tone snapped the alicorn out of her thoughts immediately, the stallion looking at her in genuine worry.
You're speaking now?
Luna asked, blinking at the guard. You look troubled. You haven't said anything for a solid minute or two. His words caused the princess's wings to slump, Luna shaking her head.
Thank you, Private Heart, but it's nothing to concern yourself with. Nothing that you could possibly understand, as kind as you are.
The switch to the more formal address caused the guard to nod, making his way out of the room with the scroll tucked into a side satchel.
Steel, I'm sorry. It's just... I'd rather not speak of it.
Luna admitted, a pang of regret coloring her thoughts at the abrupt dismissal of the caring stallion's actions, as the guard didn't respond immediately. No, I'm not asking you to. I'm just saying that there's some pony to listen, Steel said softly, slightly base-colored tones filling the brief moment of silence. And that's outside any orders or assignments. The stallion then trotted off to complete his errands, leaving Luna to slump into some pillows.
Luna, you idiot,
she whispered to herself in a pillow.
He wants to help, and you smack him. He wants to help, and you blow his concerns off. Sally was right. I do have quite a stubborn streak. Stubborn enough to push it all aside? She did. And found some creature.
Luna wrapped a pillow up in her forehooves, taking a shuddering breath as the alicorn ensured the door to her room was closed.
You're seeing General Sea Spray. After 1,000 years, you've somehow dealt with the looming issue. Even with the revelation about Twilight and Cadence. And Flurry Heart? There's so much that we don't know. Will it take me a millennium too, dear sister? I don't know if I'm strong enough to wait that long. Or did the General agree to that which few can fathom? Have you asked him? Do I have the courage to ask some creature to make that choice someday?
In the privacy of her own room, Luna let a few tears stain her pillow, the princess hugging it close as she cried.
And then the start of all of this? Is this what you dealt with, Sally? Losing friends over and over again? Enjoying lunch 1 minute, I don't know if I can do it. I already miss her.
Seems like Steelheart and Luna are getting closer together. I like that. Oh man, I can't wait until it develops further from here on out. Anyway, I'd love to give a very special thank you to my glorious donators. Top donator, Dash of Evergreen, Peter Coulthard, Dresdon, Dospo, RuneScythe9852, CourierCruz CI, Dwight Cornel, Gagi, Secret Moon, Ryanny Dragonwolf, Starlight Glimmer, David D. Sanchez, Trey, Pokekillerzach, Soul Dragon, Dak Britton, and Joe Piercy. Thank you all very much for watching this video, and I will see you all in the next one.